and my links to all my different socials are on there. But basically, I am getting into public speaking, and I talk about resilience, personal resilience, developing personal resilience, overcoming adversity, and mental health, mental well-being. I do fitness and things like that, and I define fitness as physical and mental well-being. Or physical and mental health, I should say. But the focus for me is the mental part, because if you're going to do something, you've got to want to do it. And if you're going to do it well, you've really got to want to do it. And that's where the mental bit comes in. So that's why I try to help people develop their personal resilience, if that makes sense. Because life has a tendency to throw challenges our way when we least expect it, and it will keep throwing the challenges at you. I don't believe in bad luck comes in threes, because whilst I was in the military, I was in the military for a period of time. I had a reputation at one point, for one particular period, as being the unluckiest man in NATO, and I'm not even kidding either. But roll the clock forward to now, and I've got a reputation for being the definition, walking definition of resilience. It didn't just happen. That's all I'm going to say on that one. But when you put the two together, they're complete contrasting. And ultimately, I want to help people develop their own personal resilience, and that's ultimately why I'm here. Hopefully, I can help one of your listeners, one of your watchers, and see maybe I can change one more life. And that is my goal. I want to help people, and this is how I want to help them.
I remember when I got into the work that I wanted to do, that I currently do, and I want to be of service to people and help people.
Mm-hmm.
It was right after I was going through a very difficult time in my life, and as I look back, David, I was like, if only there was a version of me back then, maybe it
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't take me 10 years. It would take me 5, 8,
Mm-hmm.
still
Yeah.
a quite number of years, right? But not as long. What got you into your want to help people, and why?
Well, it's not a it. Well, yeah, it's not a nice story, unfortunately. The blunt truth of it is, I lost a colleague like really early on in my military career. So I joined what we call the Royal Corps of Signals. It's their focus is communications. So the idea that the aim is to get the intelligence across the battlefield to where it's needed in a timely manner. That was our goal. That's what we're there to do. So we did basic infantry skills, or basics training. Like every soldier. But then we go on to trade training, and about 3 months in or so, this was right after 9/11. So literally 2 days after, one of my colleagues in the bed space next to me, so 10-man room, he's in the bed space next to me. He'd been ill for a couple of days, and woke up one more. I woke up one morning, went to the locker. His bed's next to my locker. Opened the locker door, noticed there's something not quite right. He's not moving, literally at all. Funny shade of color to his skin. Realised that he wasn't with us. And yeah, we ended up having, long story short, ended up doing CPR for about half an hour, and it turned out, I found out later, he'd been on the wrong side of it far too long. We had no chance of saving him, but we'd still been doing the CPR. But it always had an impact on me, not in a good way either. I blame myself, why did I do more? Could I have done more? What else could I have done differently? All those usual questions, irrelevant of what the doctors said, that there was nothing we could have done. Um, and that's what it was, and that's what started it. And I turned into a yes man. So anytime anybody came to me and said, I need you to do this, I need you to do that, I would take it all on. And I took on too much. And that's what ultimately I cracked a few, I think 3-4 years after that. And that's where I first got pinged with PTSD. But that was the instigator, if that makes sense, that scenario, that situation. So roll the clock forward. I've learned to manage that with help. I've had a bit of help from various different charities and doctors and so on. And I look on that situation with a different light now. So I remember, I've got images in my head of the day, if that makes sense. But I look at those things differently, you know. But ultimately, it hasn't changed anything. I want to help people. I want to do what I can, but I do it in a much more controlled manner. I'm a more selective. I say more selective. If someone comes to me in need, I will prioritize that help based on the urgency of the need, if that makes sense. So I still do a lot for charity. I do loads of different things. I've got a reputation in my area for being pretty busy, but I'm someone hopefully people can rely on to a point, if that makes sense. So, but a bit more controlled than it used to be. But that's what caused it. That's what started it, basically. Not a nice story, but
No, no, you say it's not a nice story, but I think it's an inspirational one because so many people, right? They've lost someone close, different circumstances, of course. But looking back on your brother in arms, your friend, what's if you may, um, share a fond memory or fond experience of him?
Um, okay. So there's one that jumps to mind straight away. So we didn't know each other very long, but you live with these people, you live and breathe with them. He was literally a 10-man room. He's in the bed space right next to me. And one key detail is that we did this training on the south of England, and home is the northeast of Scotland, which in distance terms, I appreciate, it's difficult to visualize, but it's about 700 miles, give or take. I think 650, 6, 7, something like that. Anyway, so it's a long way. We can't go home very often. So he and I are usually stuck there at weekends where most of the room is, gone off home again. Um, and particularly in the summer, Scots have a tendency, Scottish have a tendency to burn easy in the sun. And we would climb out the window. We're on the ground floor bed room. We climb out the window onto the grass and just lie there, and we'd fall asleep and end up getting sunburned. And he did on a particular occasion. I just remember that having a laugh with each other about a time where he basically turned into a lobster. And that was ultimately the bit that gave me the help, the fun, the way I look on the scene differently. So I remember a bad image that always stuck with me that really kind of haunted me quite a long time was I remember being stepped back from the situation while he was lying on the floor, with the paramedics doing their thing. They'd got there at this point and they're doing their thing, trying to, with their contraptions and so on. But his eyes were open the whole time, or at least I remember his eyes being open, looking at me, and I always looked at that going, he's asking me the questions, the bad questions. Why haven't I done more? I could have done differently. But now, with help from that I had from the charities and the doctors, I look on that and I remember that window that we'd climbed out of before, where he'd become the lobster, as it were. I remember I've got an image now where the light comes over my shoulders and I see his face differently now, if that makes sense. So when that bad image pops in my head, which it still does, it doesn't go away. But I look on it a little bit differently now, and I link it to that fond memory, if that makes sense. So and yeah, so it's not it doesn't have that same effect that it used to for a good portion of my career, if that makes sense.
When I lost my grandmother, it's going to be 2 years this October. She was someone that was very close to me. And one of the things that I did that helped me get over it, or get through it, I should say, is I remember the good times, similar to
Mm-hmm.
the lobster story, right? I remember something that kind of made me laugh, and it didn't always make me think of them in a different light where maybe I could have done more.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've called now that, because I speak to a few people about that grief period, is you're taking the best of that person and you're channeling it within yourself and it's becoming your superpower,
Mm-hmm.
right? So let's say, for example, if you lost someone that had a really good sense of humor, then all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden you may find yourself making similar jokes. You're like, oh yeah, that's what so and so used to do. Or when you give to charity, oh yeah, I remember that. That's what she used to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you are working with these charities looking to help people in the way that you want to help people,
Mm-hmm.
how much of that is yourself pouring into these people that maybe you've always wanted to be poured into yourself?
Um, do you know what? I've never thought of it like that, if I'm perfectly honest with you, because so one of the things I do, for example, is I manage our local community gym. It's a little fitness center. You're talking a tiny little village, 1,000 odd people live here. We've got maybe better part of 100 members, something like that. So it's nothing fancy, nothing massive. But when I go, I do the inductions. I always say I finish at the end of the induction. I always say to them, would you be happy coming in here on your own and using this equipment? And I finish on that, because if they're not, we go back to the equipment and we do it again, if that makes sense. And I'm in the induction as long as it takes to make sure they're happy, because it's an unsupervised gym. So they get a card, they can come in and go as they need to, and things like that. So I go through the induction as if they were walking the gym. So I give them the card, the key, I should say, to get into the door. They go in the door, and then I go, right, this is what you'll do if you come in on your own. Here's the light switch, here's the heaters, and here's the so on and so forth. And then before we leave, that's the question I finish on. And there's been times where I've been in there 15, 20 minutes, but there's been times I've been in there for 90 minutes to 2 hours. And that's so I need to feel like I've helped them. That's the bottom line. If I don't feel like I've helped them, then I haven't done it right. Whatever that scenario is, whether it's that gym or if it's something else, if that makes sense.
It does. Do you see yourself in the people that you help?
Um, a good question, actually. I've never thought of it like that. Yeah. Um, sometimes because I want it to rub off on others. I want to see others trying to to help others like I helped them, if that makes sense. But I don't. You can't force people to do it. At the end of the day, it's a character thing, I suppose. Not everybody's been through the same situation and doesn't have the same wants and desires. All the aspirations. I mean, it's one of my. I've only got two aspirations, and one of them is to help people, and that's like my high level aspiration. And I'd want to rub off on them. I want to. That's probably the answer to your question. I want to, and sometimes I do feel like, yeah, okay, this is a person I'm gonna see more, but yeah, I try to be optimistically pessimistic on this. I'm gonna go with that because you caught me with this question. It's a good one. I'm gonna think about this, but I think in reality, I might only get a few that will want to, pay it forward, so to speak.
I asked because the few people I talk to that's military, they
Mm-hmm.
have in themselves, they have a passion and a desire to help people.
Okay.
Whether while they're in the military or afterwards, they still find something that's going
Mm-hmm.
to help them express that. So when I speak to them and you now, the energy that you give off is I want to help people at maybe at my own cost,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because if you when they're in the military, that's essentially what it is, right? I'm going to
Yep.
defend this at all costs, and sometimes going to give my life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so when I ask those questions, it's always interesting for me to hear because even though different people have different answers, it all ties back to, okay, yeah, maybe it is because that young man over there
Mm-hmm.
who needed guidance, there was a time that maybe I needed guidance.
Mm-hmm.
I lost my friend, that person that came along, he's just lost or she's
Mm-hmm.
just lost and she needs a friend,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's why I ask those questions because when I hear your story, David, you come across as someone that really wants to help people.
Mm-hmm.
Any means, any resources, any time of the day. Share with us what are some of the ways that you are continuing to help people and some of the ways that you want to help people that maybe you're not doing today.
So, I mean, if I could help everybody, I would, But obviously, there's a limit. There's only so much any person can do. And if I can get people one at a time, great. As long as I walk away and I feel like I've helped them, I'm happy. But they need to make me feel like I've helped them. Do you know what I mean? So, like you were talking about, do I walk away thinking I've rubbed off on them? If I don't get that, then I don't feel like I've done it right. But I want to help more. The one of the key factors, the key stats that I'm aware of in my country, in Scotland, is that 70% of Scotland, statistically speaking, is considered to be overweight and obese, and then diabetes rates are going up and things like that. And I became aware of that because of my own situation with diabetes and stuff like that. And I was like, well, what am I going to do? I can't go around and personally train every single individual. That's just ridiculous. So what could I do? And I thought, well, maybe I can start putting myself out there and reaching out to bigger organizations and trying to get bigger groups of people together, if that makes sense, or getting more of a platform to do it on. And I was fortunate enough to be able to get that opportunity and be able to speak in Scottish Parliament. I've no idea if I had an impact on anybody, but I can say that I did, if that makes sense. If that makes sense. But I'm still trying to do more locally. So I did that bit in Parliament last September, but I'm about to join another charity, a regional level charity, if that makes sense, that helps people in poverty and particularly people with special needs who are looking to get into employment but don't know how to, and are obviously with special needs as well, whether it be learning difficulties or I don't know, some other neuro diverse condition of some kind. I don't know what the correct medical terms are. To me, they're just people that just have additional needs. It's not there's nothing special about it. It's just they're still a person. It's just they need a little help, and that's it. And it's just like there's so much of it in my area. I suppose there's so much of it everywhere, but I don't know what to do about all of it. But I can do something. So if I can help, on a higher level, that's what I'm trying to do now. If that makes sense. It sounds crazy because I do a lot on the low level. I'm trying to go higher so I can impact more people now. If that makes sense. I'm trying to make it make sense in my own mind, but I'm kind of one of them people. I'm just a glutton for punishment. I just take on something else and something else. If someone comes and asks me, because that's how this came about. This one I'm talking about. I got asked to be a director on a charity that is basically all about helping the people I was mentioning, and on a sort of regional level. And someone came to me and said, "Hey, we've got these spaces opening up the charity. Would you like to get involved? We know you've got a lot on your plate already. You do X, Y, and Z, and so on, but we think you might be the right person to fit this position." It's all about the strategy of the charity, not so much driving the buses or being there in person. It's about keeping enabling the charity to get as many people as possible, and looking at it from a high level perspective. And I was like, right, that's the place I want to be, because then I might be able to influence a bigger group of people, if that makes sense. And that's what I want to try and do. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
It does.
I've gone around
It
in circles
does.
a little bit there.
No, but it's I think that happens when you're so passionate about something and you have so
Mm-hmm.
much going on and you're like, I want to save the entire world. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
how am I going to do that? Well, I'm going
Yeah,
to save this. I'm going to save this country. I'm going to save this country. I'm going to save this
yeah.
country. I'm doing a lot of work in this small town over here, but I'm going to take some of that energy and go over here. Where do you pull your motivation, inspiration, and your energy from to continue helping others?
um, I think it goes back to that one aspiration. So, as like I said, I've got two aspirations. One, you could argue I've already achieved. Sorry, and that is to be remembered. I've got two kids. I'm going to be remembered, of course I am. But the second one is to help people, and they're the two highest level aspirations I've got. I've got little things I want to do here and there, but there's nothing comes above them, if that makes sense. So, and because my mate, his name was Tony. You know what I mean? He's always there. He's never forgotten every single day. We're talking 25 years now, 25 and a half ish years, give or take. And that's always there. You know, I might be coping better with it, but it's always there. Do you know what I mean? It never goes away, you know. And that's why that remains strong, if that makes sense. That's why that aspiration always is there at the back of my mind. You know, what can I do next? What else can I do next? You know, the next layer of goals underneath that, underneath those two aspirations, they're to do with putting my family in a better position. You know, if I was to step off the curb tomorrow and something happened, you know, hit by a bus or whatever, you know, something outside of my control, then are they going to be okay? So I've got various things going on, you know, various layers of redundancy that if I'm not here, they're going to be fine, you know. And then that's how my goals work, you know. My personal goals are at the bottom of the pile, if that makes sense, in a weird and wonderful way. So I'll fit my stuff in around that, because I want to try and, which then links to the business and the idea of talking about resilience and all that kind of stuff. Because if I can help people to better manage the situations they've got going on in their lives, you know, and create their own safety net, if that makes sense, and learn to create their own safety net, then they can be less dependent on getting the handouts, getting the support from others, being dependent on those individual levels of support. They can be more dependent on themselves and be more reliant on themselves and have that mental freedom to step away from worry, if that makes sense, which hopefully would make them better. I say better, you know, put them in a better place. Does that make sense? So
Yeah,
that's
helping
what I'm
others get
trying
into
to
a
do.
better position.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's what I'm trying to do. Because I mean, I can help people with the initial issue, but I can't say they're not going to get more problems, more challenges, more things as the road goes on. Because that's life, you know. The challenges come at any time. So, but maybe I can help them adapt to embrace those challenges and adapt to them, you know, better, if that makes sense, going forward, so they can be more self-reliant, you know, irrelevant of their current situation. So, and that's ultimately what I'm trying to do. So, in a weird and wonderful way.
When you're doing this work, what do you find are some of the obstacles that are maybe impacting people who are you're helping in their life?
So the two biggest ones that I look at is financial literacy and using smart devices effectively. By smart device, I mean like your smartphone or your tablet or the laptop, you know, because you artificial intelligence, all of them now. But it's using them to your advantage, you know, because the big thing in the UK about phones in schools and the things kids are looking up on social media and the things they're being exposed to and all this kind of other stuff. But the if you learn to use this stuff, if you're getting shown, if you're getting mentored in using this stuff effectively, And the same goes back to finance as well. If we're taught to use the bank account properly, using credit cards effectively, how to get a mortgage, how to look after your electric bills, buying the shopping in the supermarket, you name it. If you're taught these things from an early age and it's encouraged and it's discussed openly, then it becomes less of an issue. It's a more, it's less of a problem. But the challenge I face, especially like with a lot of the older generation, is they're taboo subjects. Nobody wants to know. These devices aren't smart devices, tools to do things more effectively. They're just phones that people spend too much time looking at a screen. For example, I do like bite-sized personal development videos and things of that nature. I look at YouTube a little bit. I look to your show, for example. I spend a little bit of time reading little things, or looking at little things, or listening to listen to little videos of people. Something that Will Smith said a while back in one of his motivational videos is about, he talks about self-discipline and he calls it self-love. And I think the little things like that, things I wouldn't consider if I hadn't heard it or been exposed to it. If we included subjects like that in schools, for example, financial literacy and using smart devices effectively, then we could teach them about developing themselves personally, looking after their mental health, monitoring their health stats, managing their finances, doing their shopping online and looking up the good deals and all the little things that we as adults have learned to do over time. If they're taught that at school, they could be foundational lessons, But the challenge, back to your question, sorry, I've gone off on tangents here, but the challenge is that is trying to get the older generation to see that these are important subjects. It's the way the world's going. If we know how to do those things better, then that is crucial to developing personal resilience. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And it leads me to an example where you and I look roughly around the same age. You're maybe a few years older than me.
I've shaved
I
recently, so I
remember
look a bit younger. I'm just saying.
there you go, right? So I'm almost 40, so I don't know if that's a compliment, so a couple of years older than me or not, but I'll stick with it. It's a compliment. Growing up, I was raised by my grandmother as we were discussing,
Mhm.
and I remember community being such a big thing for
Yeah.
the generation that was coming up. You had elders that would call them, you had mentors, you just had community. We were
Mhm.
stronger together than we were apart.
Mhm.
One thing that I noticed as I've gotten older, it just seems, and maybe this is because I don't have children, so I'll get your input. That community aspect that I was so accustomed to seems to either be disappearing or it's gone.
Mhm.
And I share that because when you're in need of financial literacy or you needed to just being able to ask a girl out, like, what do you say? Because I'm so nervous. Oh
Mhm.
my God, David, I just can't function, right?
Yeah.
You can go to someone else that's been there, that was married 20, 30 years, regardless of their background, regardless of their religious beliefs, regardless of anything,
Mhm.
saying, this is what worked for me. You'd go down the street, so on and so forth.
Mhm.
Do you think community is disappearing or it's gone? And if so, what do you think we can do collectively to restore it?
Um, so with any given problem, right, I've got my steps. I've got like a 5-step process I apply to a challenging problem. And the middle bit, no, sorry, fourth step is to embrace change and inevitable mistakes. Now, one of the key things, back to your question, is that you've got a generation that doesn't want to go near smart devices. They don't use them at all, don't like going online. And then you've got the other end of the spectrum, a young generation who are on them all the time. There needs to be a happy medium. If the old generation embraces it and engages with it and can see it from the lens of the younger generation, and the younger generation can work with them as well, it goes both ways, then I think we'll get that community. I think the community needs to adapt to what we've got. We've got all this technology. The community can go online as well. It's like, take how you and I met. We met obviously on the podcast, the Facebook sites, everything. I saw your ad, I got in touch, and here we are. But if more people did things like that, then who says a community has to be a little village? Like I live in a little village in the northeast of Scotland, in a rural area. There's 1,000 people live here, but who says a community has to just be that 1,000 people? Why can't it be 1,000 people spread out around the world, but they connect with each other online all the time? I've got friends and family live in Australia, for example, literally other side of the planet. Does it mean I can't talk to them anymore or be connected with them and still share stories and so on? Of course not. I can still connect with them like you and I are connecting from across the pond now. So that would be my answer to that question: is both sides need to meet in the middle. It's the bottom line. We need these devices, this technology to manage various aspects of our life. Why can't we manage the community that way as well?
That's a good point because the community doesn't have to be within the neighborhood, the physical neighborhood. A neighborhood
Mm-hmm.
could be like you and I
Yeah.
across the pond, or it could be if you have family members that have moved away or friends that moved outside of the city, does that
Mm-hmm.
mean the friendship is over? You know, it's like that out of sight, out of mind syndrome where it's like, okay, because I can't see you, you're
Mm-hmm.
dead to me.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Right. But some people think that. I remember I used to live in the downtown area of my city. And this was probably in my early 20s, so it's, just under 20 years ago. And I remember the amount of people that would consider me a friend or that I would consider a friend was like Facebook. You had hundreds
Mm-hmm.
and thousands of people, right?
Mm-hmm.
You guys all got together and you're walking down the street, people would cross the road like, oh my God, I can't fit on the sidewalk. Right? It was just marching along. And then as we grew up, because many of us either were living at home or living on our own because we're there because of school. Once school ended and people started to either go back home or move away, friendships
Mm-hmm.
were over,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I remember I was one of the last ones to move away and I saw this and I sat down one day and I was like, my time is up. Right? My time is up in this group. And I'm trying to fight it. I'm trying to hold on. I'm trying to say, no, it's only because I drove at that time. Like it's only 20-minute drive.
Mm-hmm.
And I would come down, and after a while, I just felt out of place
Mm-hmm.
because I wasn't there all the time. When you're helping people and you see some of the struggles that you mentioned with the technology and things like that, and how we need that bridging of the two generations,
Mm-hmm.
could time and distractions be impacting these two from coming together?
So I'll go back to the point I made about the younger generation, social media, and that kind of stuff. I think I get what the like in Australia they put a full all-out ban on social media for, is it up to 16 years old or something, I think, and I can see the logic in that because they need to, it's to use it, to be on there. I think at least there needs to be that level of maturity, to use social media specifically. But the older generation could learn a lot from the younger generation in terms of using various apps, but the younger generation could learn a lot from the older generation in terms of who they're engaging with via these apps. So I go back to the point about I watch a little bit of like Will Smith and various other motivators online, in terms of their motivational speeches and things of that nature. And when you start watching things like that, the algorithm learns there's kind of things you like to watch. So you'll get more of things like that. Well, if kids get coached and mentored into, well, why don't you look at this and why don't you look at that? And once they find the things they like in that sense, they'll get more of that and they'll start getting. So if I'm out in terms of the friends I keep now, I've learned to keep people close that add value to my life. People that I want to be around. Value can come in many forms. People I enjoy being around, have a laugh with, people I can learn from, people that keep me motivated and will make me want to be better. Well, the same applies to who and what I interact with online. Do you know what I mean? So why can't I choose the people I'm around with online, if that makes sense? So the older generation could be encouraging the younger generation, whether in person or via from across the pond over means like this. Why don't you look at this? Why don't you look at that? Read this bit, watch this video, play that game, all that kind of stuff, with the aim of helping them to become better. Again, it doesn't have to be in person. The community can be thousands of miles apart, but it's who and what we choose to engage with online. That's back to the point I made about being teaching kids, coaching kids to use smart devices effectively, because they're being by banning it, by stopping them using it, we're basically saying, right, you're not getting this stuff until you're 18 you're going to get it all at once, unfiltered, you crack on and figure it out for yourself, which is not going to be a good thing. Do you know what I mean? I can't see that being a good thing. So why not encourage them to use this stuff, but use it effectively, for the good and benefit of their lives and their future lives as well. If they learn it a bit at a time, drip fed, and they're encouraged to use it effectively, they can build their circle of valued apps, people watching, viewing, reading material, from through mentorship from the older generation. And the older generation can learn how to use this stuff from the younger generation. So yeah, you know,
I agree. I think that if you ease someone into something, it's always better versus like your
mm-hmm.
point. You just could say, "Okay, we're gonna throw you into the deep end," and we don't even ask, "Can you swim?"
That's it.
Right?
Yeah, well, I mean, you think about it as well. We as a generation created all this technology. We've expanded this technology. We can't then say you're not allowed to use it. It's at the end of the day they're a significant target market for an array of reasons, gaming and all the latest labels and all this kind of other stuff. The amount of consumerism that goes into things like that, the stuff we buy our kids, because they saw it on TV or they heard their friends talk about it in the playground or whatever. I think what is it my kids are on at the minute. In fact, my eldest, sorry, when she was younger, she used to watch a lot of Miss Rachel if we were stuck at home, on YouTube. A really very, very good kids program. She's a really good educator from what we can see. But the only downside is, I say downside, it's not really a bad thing, but she had an American accent. So my daughter, Scottish, started developing an American accent over a period of like summer holidays or something. And so we had to kind of curb that a bit for that reason. We're like, right, okay, we maybe need to try and take a break from work now and again because we work from home, you see. Maybe we take a break for every half an hour and we go and teach her something ourselves or something like that. So like I actively try and teach my kid maths and things like that now. So she scared the teacher the other day, 6 years old, went in and told the teacher the 100 times table, the 10 times table up to 100. Like, they're being taught 2 times 2 at the minute. So all good fun. But so yeah, we've learned as we've been going as well, if that makes sense. Technology is good within limits, and as parents, as older generation, I'm learning those limits as well. So it's active learning on both sides, if that makes sense.
When you mentioned how involved you are with your children, how important is it to bridge that gap with starting it from the home and within the home?
So, well, they're seeing us doing it. We are the first mentor that they've got. The first person guiding me into the world, if that makes sense. So I see it is I am accountable for ensuring that they are prepared for that day they turned 18. Whether it's 18 or 20 or 22, they leave home and go out into the world themselves to do whatever it is they want to do. I need to get them as prepared as possible for that. And technology is arguably a significant element in how I maintain a resilient lifestyle. You know what I mean? How I can adapt to challenges and things like that as and when they happen. From calendars to finances to hell, even just paying for the electric or buying the heating oil or anything and everything. Yeah. How we organize this podcast we're doing now. If they're seeing us on them all the time, they're going to want to be them on them all the time. So I can't just like give them a device and say, "Hey, have at it, crack on," because that wouldn't be sensible at all. At the same time, I've got to learn a little bit, pay attention to what they're doing, and make a judgment call. Is that the right thing they should be watching? Are they talking about weapons and hurting people and things of that nature, or are they talking about how they can learn from other people and how to help people and be generous and and that kind of stuff, if that makes sense. So it's a give and take. It's not a fire and forget. It's you've got to be constantly adapting to it as it goes, because kids are sponges and they learn really quick. Far quicker than I do now. So it's something that's got to be kept on top of. I think it's very easy, and I've fallen foul of it myself. It's very easy to sit back and let this take over. So yeah, that's the thing. It's got to be flexible and adaptable and constantly evolving. So being humble enough to know that you're not going to get it right all the time. You've got to be prepared to learn from the mistakes and accept when you make the mistake as well.
I saw an interview where I think it was a father, it was him and his daughter, and he worked on the road a lot. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that he did is that they both played this game. It was like a word game. I want to say it was Scrabble, but it was something else.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned technology, and because of technology, they both were able to share a passion that they both had of words
Mm-hmm.
with each other. Even though if he wasn't there at home or if she wasn't there, wherever they were, they were
Hmm.
able to connect through that game. And
Hmm.
when you shared that, it reminded me of that story that we often give social media a lot of flack, saying that, oh,
Hmm.
it's evil, it's the Antichrist. But it connects people like that, where you can have a parent and a child who are
Hmm.
miles apart and they come together every single day to play a
Hmm.
game. And I think that's just beautiful.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. Well, that's exactly why I use social media. So I mentioned before that I was based other side of the UK, to where I live now, literally one corner to the other almost. But I was also based overseas for periods of time. I was on operations and so on and so forth. That's how I let people know what was going on, because I can't call everybody every day. Like for example, when I was in Afghanistan, you were given 30 minutes a week, to call home. So I'd obviously call my parents and girlfriend at the time. If I had any time left, which usually wasn't the case, I might try and call someone else, and say hello. But social media was the way I could let everybody know, say, hey, I'm all right. This is what's going on, blah, blah, blah. So that's what I used it primarily for. On the flip side of it as well is you get like the dating apps and stuff like that as well. That's how people they get, especially like people like in a situation like myself. We're in a little rural area. We're nowhere near the cities. We haven't got the luxury of being able to go to the local nightclub or any local sort of big events of any kind. So that enables us to find other connections. And I say that specifically because that's how my wife and I met. We actually met on a pen pal site. I used to do old school writing, letter writing, and that's how we met, believe it or not. So there are some bad things on that one as well for the same similar reasons. But it does work as well. It's pros and cons to both sides, isn't there? So
Yeah, unfortunately, you won't ever find any creation that's ever perfect, not even
absolutely,
people.
yeah, yeah. It's a case of going in. I find it's a case of going in with an open mind and just being acknowledging that, yeah, be aware of this, be prepared for the fact that things aren't going to be perfect all the time, but it's the times that they are that makes it worth it. You know.
So as you continue, David, through the work that you do and how you're helping people, what is a goal of yours for the next, let's say, next 6 months, 9 months, even 12 months in regards to all the work that you're doing and why?
So one thing that my wife helps me a lot with the background work. So I'll do things like this. I'll do the networking, the people, the engaging with people directly. Obviously, go out and do the talks and things about nature. My other half, she does the sort of social media things. So she gets the credit for like how the website looks, how the social media looks. She gives me the ideas for the posts and things like that. And one thing we're doing at the moment, and the other half gets a lot of the credit for this, is we're writing a book now. So we're up to chapter 2 now, and the aim is to basically walk people through my process of how I deal with problems, and then apply it to that whole resiliency piece, if that makes sense, with the aim of helping them to develop their own resiliency safety net, so to speak. But yeah, the aim is to get it to finish by the end of March and then hopefully get it out, if that makes sense, beyond that, which then allows me to get out to more people. So that's something we're doing right now that we're trying to do. At the same time, it's develop a sort of speaking package, because a lot of the speaking I do, it's like evening and weekend type things for schools, for after dinner type things, for charities and groups and things of that nature. And a lot of it is groups of people who have struggles and they don't know how to get out of it, or they're focused on one specific space. So for example, take my space, where in terms of diabetes, I've got a connection with type 1 diabetes, and you've got people that get so caught up in that one bit that everything else gets forgotten about. um, and that therein, for me, like I say to them, I say, this is where you've got to step back and look at it from a resiliency angle, because if you focus on one thing, that's not being resilient. That's just you being a specialist in one item. A resilient person is someone who has bits of everything covered. You can't be an expert in everything. You've got to be good at everything, if that makes sense. Well, say good at everything. You've got to be able to do everything, and that takes time. It takes learning from mistakes, applying those lessons, moving on to the next, and keeping going and keeping adding to the pile until you've got a nice soft pile ready to absorb any challenge that comes in, if that makes sense. But it takes time, and it's not exciting. It's boring as hell. I mean, I get up in the morning every morning. I work through. I get my bills paid. I do my fitness. I do like little puzzles or little challenges to get my brain going and that in the morning. By the time the kids have gotten up, I've walked the dog. I've been and opened the local community gym. I've done all the bill paying, the credit cards, the electric, whatever. They can come down, have their breakfast, get ready for school, and off they go. They don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. But it's not like I'm getting up and going, right, let's save the planet. I'm doing something majorly awesome that's every day. It's these little bits that add up over time that has led to where I'm at now, if that makes sense. But it was hard work. I mean, you take getting out of bed at the same time every day. I mean, I get out of bed at 4 every morning. It took me quite a period of time to get my body used to that, to the point where I don't need an alarm clock. It was not easy. It was not easy, but that was how it started. You then add to it, get up, do 10 push-ups. You then get up, do 10 push-ups, get a glass of water, and you keep adding something else to it until you get to a point where you're just going through the motions, because the discipline takes over, if that makes sense. You get up and do it because that's what you're used to doing. That's when it's a habit and not just a whim or a New Year's resolution that you try for 2 weeks and then give up, if that makes sense. So yeah, but that's what I'm trying to do now, is to get that across, which is where the book comes in. So I've got a better explanation of it. And then where these talks happening, it's trying to write the keynotes to go with it, if that makes sense, and develop those. So it's a long ass story there. I really apologize for that. But they're the two things I'm working on at the minute, the book and the keynotes, because the talks continue. I've usually got 1 or 2 a week normally. I've got the ones that are most important to me are the ones that involve the next generation, because they're the ones that will get the most benefit out of it, if that makes sense. And if I can get them early, it will benefit them for the rest of their life, but I'll help anybody that comes to me, basically. I'll do well to be able to find a reason not to.
What does it mean to you to have your wife by your side while you're doing all of this?
Well, the bottom line is I wouldn't be able to do it without her. There's no two ways about it. A good way to see that in action, what it means, how much it means is so I did the Invictus Games, right? So you can see the medal that's off behind me up there. That was quite a struggle to put it in really short order. The reason being is because I signed up to do it to get help with the various injuries and such like. Because I was medically discharged from the army the year before that I got selected for the team, and everything was going fine. And you're talking, we got told we were selected about 8-9 months before the games. And about roughly 3.5 months before the games, I got really quite seriously ill. Something I found out afterwards, that it was called diabetic ketoacidosis, which is basically where my body had stopped producing insulin, and it was basically eating away at all the energy and in the muscles and in my fat stores and everything. And basically, I was getting thinner and thinner, losing loads of weight. I lost 26, I think it was 26.5% of my body weight in 2 weeks, because it got to that point. And I only called the doctor because I'd given up trying to figure it out for myself. I didn't know where else to go. I was eating 4,000 calories a day. I was still training. I was even competing the week before I got the diagnosis in local events, in local time trials on the bike. And the point at which I gave up was the point at which I could no longer explain why I was losing the weight. I was eating loads of food. I was drinking loads of water. I was thirsty all the time. I couldn't sleep and everything. Anyway, got the doctors, went through tests, and they told me, yeah, the reason is you're a type 1 diabetic and you're currently in DKA. That's what's happening. So you either need to focus on getting well, and ideally drop out of the team. And I was like, well, not doing that. I'm going to change my sights from focusing on recovery and managing my injuries better to going for that thing, with the aim of using that as incentive to learn to live with this condition, if that makes sense. So the reality is Steph did all the background stuff while I was doing that. So I was focusing on learning to take the insulin, to eat what food and when, how much, and then learning to correct the insulin and all this kind of stuff, and then go and do all the training, and then travel to all the training camps, and then go and do various PR things through the team and things of that nature, all the sort of stuff you'd expect sports people to be doing, during that kind of stuff. At the same time, Steph's managing the household, she's looking after the kids, she's doing all the other bits and pieces and things like that. But anyway, roll the clock forward. Sorry, long story, but just to give you a bit of context. We got to the games, we get to the race, did the time trial, won it by the skin of my teeth, literally half a second in it. Went to the medal ceremony. Prince Harry's the one that's actually putting the medal around my neck. And after he's done it, the emotion, everything, the pressure just plummets off, like drops away, an absolute bag of emotion. Prince Harry gets my daughter and my eldest over the barriers, and this is all on video, by the way. This is on YouTube, so you can look it up. So you can actually. So the reason I bring this story is you can see how much we mean to each other and what we're doing, and what's going on, because we all turn into emotional wrecks. And you've got media all around us, literally 6 feet from us. And the funny story of it is that Steph, myself, and Sophia are all sitting there blubbing away. Like, on one side of me, you've got the cameraman on this side seeing my ugly crying face. And then you can see in that picture that there's another reporter on the other side of us. But then you get the image from that one, and you can see Steph's ugly crying face, and she hates that image because the world gets to see it. But then you can see the media on the other side, so it's like you get to see all the angles. It's kind of weird being in it, but you can see all that on video. You can see it all there. It's like a 2-minute video on YouTube. I can't remember what the actual search is, but Invictus Games, Prince Harry, and my name or something, or things like that. But all the emotion dropped away, all the pressure dropped away, all the everything I've been going through for 3 months to learn to live with T1 and compete, and then everything Steph had seen and all the stress she's putting up with me in a nutshell. We had no idea what was going on around us. We were too focused on just having our moment, and it was quite surreal. So there's a bit in the video where you see Prince Harry come back up behind me, and he puts the saltire back, the Scottish flag, back over my shoulders. He actually did it twice. I didn't even realise I dropped it. I didn't even realise he put it around my shoulders. I knew someone had done it, but it was him, But yeah, we were just emotional wrecks, and it was. But that you can see. That's the point. So when you say, back to your question, and this is a really long story, apologies. But when you ask how much it means, that hopefully gives you a clear. If you watch that video, you'll see just how much it meant, because Steph was the only one who could see how much pressure I was putting myself under, and she was the one who's doing all the background work, enabling me to then focus on what I needed to focus on, if that makes sense. So that wouldn't be there without her.
Yeah.
So
when you both had that moment that you described, you placed, you won, you both are in tears. Seems like everyone around the world has their eyes on you, but the emotion just took over. The next day, how was your emotional response, even hers, now that you're 1 day past and you're like, oh my God, it's over, but you're still thrilled because you both supported each other through it and continue to do so? What was your emotional reactions for the both of you, if you remember it?
So I can't say. I'm not sure with Steph in mind. I'm not really sure. Sorry, Stephanie, her name is, so Steph. I'm not really sure what emotional sort of state she had in the next day. I think it was, for me, it was relief, if that makes sense. All the work, all the sacrifice, everything that we'd gone through, it was relief. I mean, we were both like, it was a really calm day. I felt anyway. There was no more pressure. There was no more, I've got to do this and I've got to do the test there and I've got to eat this and I've got to eat that much of it and at this time and I've got to be there with the bike and I've got to do this and everything else. There were still things I had to go and do as part of the team. And there was Steph obviously still had the kids, so she had the usual stresses parents have, and so on. Because we were kept relatively separate. Because I was on the team, we had to be, certain rules we had to keep to. But it was just like that sense of relief. The pressure had gone, because you can kind of see that in that 2-minute video I mentioned. You can see as we get happier, and then Prince Harry comes in and we're having a little chin wag, and you can see the difference, and that kind of just followed into the next day. But the funny story is, just from a more personal perspective, is the poster that's over my shoulder here that says "I'm the master of my fate." I actually, dare I say it, nicked it from the arena. I'd walked past it several days. For several days there, the cycling race was on the 6th day, and the closing ceremony was on the 7th. And I walked past it so many days. On the day after, I was walking past it, and it just suddenly occurred to me that that's exactly what I am. I've just proven it by doing what I just did. And yes, I didn't do it on my own. My wife was there as well, but I was like, I'm having it. Of all the things I could go and buy or try and get out of there or whatever. Not that I do that sort of thing, you know what I mean? But I mean, I didn't just take it. I did actually ask permission. There was a security guard stood 10 feet from it. And I remember walking up to him and I said, hey, mate, look, well, I didn't ask permission. I just walked up to him and said, just to warn you, I'm having that. And all he said was, don't take the frame. So I actually paid 150 quid and got it framed. And the guy who framed it actually took a bit of creative license and got the gold frame around it, obviously for obvious reasons. But yeah, I actually took that poster because of the message on it, because it just resonated with me on that day. I've just proven it. I am. So therefore, so I think that's probably the bit that I remember most about that day and the day after, if that makes sense. I've just proven something that I'd never realized before, if that makes sense. And then, yeah, I've moved forward from there, really.
David, let me ask you one final question. And I want to do it in a form as I want to give you three wishes.
Okay.
And these are three things that you wish that our audience or anyone will know today. And since you mentioned that poster, because I was going to refer to this, what are three things you wish people knew about the phrase, I am the master of my fate, and why?
So I don't think there's three things per se. There's really only one that I would lean on. The other two would be back to the lessons that I wish I'd learned earlier, which would be the financial literacy and the using technology to our advantage. You know what I mean? Learning to use technology to advantage. They're given. They're something I would definitely wish I would learn, and that's what I wish people would take away: is go away and learn those things because they will benefit your life better. But the one thing, the key thing, is it's not. I'm the master of fate does not mean that I can be successful every single time. It doesn't mean that I'm going to be without challenges or I'm going to have I'm going to have a perfect life. Excuse my French, but shit's going to happen. I've always believed there's three certainties in life, and one of them is change. We're always going to be hit with change, whether we want it or not, whether we see it coming or not, whether we like it or not. And the reality is, it's that message to me what it means is I can choose how I respond to it. I am in control of that. I can't control what's coming, but I can control how I respond to it. And that is ultimately what I did with the type 1 diabetes. And that's why that resonated with me. It's a condition that has to be managed all the time. I mean, you might have heard the buzzing a little while ago. That was it telling me that I'm close to my limit. That's probably why I'm speaking a little quicker, because I'm getting lower, not bad lower, but I'm getting lower. And that's just my early warning that buzzed a little earlier, in case you heard it. But it's very easy to get caught up in the negatives of this, and a lot of people do, and you see it a lot online where people struggle with it, with the constant management that this condition needs. But you can take control of how you respond to this. You can still be effective. You can still live a good life. You can still have a lot of good things and do nice things and help lots of people. Which is obviously what I'm trying to do.